Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Data for Good meetup for May 23rd. We have a really interesting lineup for you. And before we get into the speakers, we'll just do a little bit of background on Data for Good for those who may be new to us. And just starting with the land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live on the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda. And the city of Calgary is also home for Métis Nation of Alberta, districts 5 and 6. So Data for Good, we're a group of volunteers, data analysts, data scientists, anybody with a passion for data that want to use those skills for social good. So we partner, we work with nonprofit and social organizations to really help them harness the power of data, the data that they have inside their organizations and outside their organizations through analytics and visualizations, and really to help improve and leverage their impact in the community. And here in Calgary, we're one of 9 chapters across Canada, from Vancouver all the way to the Maritimes. And we've been around as an organization for about 10 years. And we celebrated our 10-year anniversary here in Calgary with an event in January. And the recording of that event, where we brought back a lot of our previous partners, is available on our meetup site under that celebration event. So yeah, as I mentioned, we've been around since November 2013. We have over 3,200 members on Meetup, which is amazing. And we work with organizations in kind of 3 different ways, from kind of larger to smaller. We have, and I'll talk more about these in a minute, but our large events called Datathons, which are kind of a weekend event with larger organizations. We have partner projects with sort of medium-sized, smaller organizations that focus on one particular project. And we've launched a series of micro projects, which are member-led projects driven by you. You bring your ideas to us and we spin up a project. And we typically meet on the 4th Thursday of the month. We do take a break over the summer and over the Christmas holidays. And there's our contact sites, our meetup, and also X and our national website. So I mentioned our datathons, and we do 1 or 2 of these a year. And in Calgary, we've partnered with the Calgary Foundation, the Calgary Homeless Foundation, Distress Center. Last year, we did one with Jumpstart Refugee Talent, a national organization that works to help refugees get professional jobs. And as I said, these are sort of longer term engagements well in advance of the Datathon, and really help them to understand their data, come up with challenges, and then bring those to our members. And we're targeting our next Datathon in the November timeframe, kind of dependent on the organization that we'll be working with. And here you see some of the other chapters across Canada, some of the other organizations that they've been working with. Partner projects, we usually have 2 or 3 of these going on at a particular time. We have 3 right now that have been launched and kind of in flight. Two Wheel View, which is a local organization that kind of uses bicycles to engage youth. Kind of an amazing program. And we have a team working there to help them with their data, also to help build dashboards and come up with additional data that they can kind of collect in the future. We're working with a group called Goodbot. They're actually out of BC, out of Vancouver, but they are building something called the Canadian Responsible Tech Library, which is essentially a repository of resources, all related to ethics and AI and data, all in the context of responsible use of technology. And we have a team working there, both on the back end and the front end. And finally, Human Venture is a local organization. They are a nonprofit. They have a training and various engagement in the concept of human venture, which is really exploring the leading edge of human and social development. So they're kind of a cool group as well. So we'll be probably not launching additional projects, probably until the spring will be the next launch of new partner projects. Yeah, and then we have just launched some micro projects which are in flight as well. So I'll be signing off here, and then we'll be turning to Evelyn, who will be talking about While She Is True, with a short presentation about a really exciting group that's educating, empowering, and encouraging young girls to pursue tech. And then we'll have our keynote presentation this evening from Cybera on the program on Callysto, which is really computational thinking in the K-12 classroom, which is just fascinating and really needed program that is moving forward. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to you, Yvonne. Please introduce yourself and your organization.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and we'll go straight into the presentation. Yeah. So my name is Ebu. I'm part of While She's True. I'm one of the founders here, and I'm joined with Naomi, who's also one of our volunteers, and we're both still students at the University of Calgary. And we'll go briefly into our story. So While She's True started through a personal experience. In 2018, I moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I was coerced by my dad to take this computer science class, which I was like, I don't really want to be a part of this. But after a couple of classes, I fell in love. It was like an instant connection. But it was quite interesting because I realized that the classes, in terms of like the gender proportion, was quite interesting. In a class of like almost 30 people, there are just like 5 girls. And that has been an interesting statistic that has continued even up until my time here in the university studying computer science. And also just in my local community around me, it was hard to find someone, a mentor, a woman who I could look up to in tech, who had these skills, who had gone through these experiences. And this is an issue that it was really dear to me, and that's why While She was started. But it's not just a local issue, and as you might know, in fact, in North America, it's said to be that about 25% of the tech field are women, and just 21% of BSc holders in computer science are women. So we believe that While She's True is able to change this narrative. And our vision is, as Jeff said, is educating, empowering, and encouraging young girls from various underprivileged groups or places by providing them with the opportunities that they need to explore and eventually pursue the technology industry. And our approach is threefold. So the first way we achieve this is through education. So we teach our students using foundational technology knowledge. Secondly, we understand that beyond education, there exist resources that there exist resources that could hinder our students or hinder young girls from exploring technology due to lack of funds. So we provide that. And the last aspect is mentorship. We want to provide these girls with mentors, people that they can look to in the technology field and say, if they can do this, then I can do this. I'll pass it over to Naomi to continue with the presentation.
So why do we choose the age group of 8 to 13 years old? We're targeting this age group because we want to provide these girls the early exposure to the technology field. We want to enable them to understand how technology, how applications, and how computer work at a really young age. And as you may have already know, so in today's world, we use a lot of technology in every single aspect of our life. So it's good for them to even understand that, even though if after studying with us, they decide not to pursuing the tech field, that is also good for them because we have taught them a skill set that they will need for their life in any field that they want to pursue. And finally, and secondly, we want to foster creativity and problem solving in these young girls. Because these skills are very valuable, even in their personal or professional life. So our coding classes, we teach them how to debug, how to work through a problem so that they can foster this mindset for themselves. And lastly, we want to break down all the preconceived notion that computer science and technology are only for boys. We want to help them to see that it is an accessible field for everyone, and women are able to thrive in this field as well. And we want to bring this mindset to these younger, empowering them to pursue the industry and not shying away from it. So up until today, we have run 6 iterations of coding classes and 1 workshop in total. So one class normally lasts like either like for the whole semester, like around 4 months, or we even have some classes for 2 months. And we teach introductory and intermediate coding to our students using like block programming interfaces such as Scratch, Microbit, Code.org, or even Python, because it's like block programming, so it's very easy for them to understand. They just have to work through the logic and they can develop those problem solving skills. And it's also fun because they can create like games and everything that they feel relevant to them. So what have we achieved so far in our journey? After 6 iterations of classes, we have a very high student return rate of 83%. And most of the students say that they love the classes, and they even introduce wild she issue to their friends. And second, so we asked their parents on the scale of 1 to 5 how much they thought their child's coding knowledge has increased after taking our classes. And the parents gave us a score of 4.83 on average. And lastly, 100% of the parents say that their daughter feels a lot more included in technology after being at Wild She's Shoe. And now we'll pass it off to Abun to talk about what we are actually teaching.
Yeah, thank you. So this is just an overview of some of the core skills and concepts that we instill in our students, and we've seen them growing these skills. As Naomi mentioned, creativity. We want them to know how to create new things that are valuable to society and to wherever they find themselves in. And there's some more computer science specific concepts such as conditionals, loops, sequencing, and parallelism. We also teach them testing and debugging, because oftentimes as children they like get frustrated when things don't work, but we teach them the process of looking through their work, testing, and ensuring that they find out solutions to the problems that they have. Then another important skill we teach them is experimenting and iterating, going through things several times to ensure that you end up with the final project that is good and useful. And lastly, data. We're in an era of data where it's so useful and valuable for a numerous fields. So we teach them the concept of storing data, using it in multiple places, and how it can help them even better the projects that they work in. So Some testimonials we've had from students. So first, we've had a student say that the last time that she felt included in technology was at While She's Drew. And we've also had our students say that if I have friends that would want to learn how to code, I would introduce them to While She's Drew. So before we end, if you'd like to learn more about us or help us in any way, we're looking for volunteers, advisors, people to partner with us, even if you have a funding source that could help us, and even parents, if you have a daughter, you have a niece, anyone that you think would benefit, please scan the QR code to our website, or you can just go to whileshe'strue.org. Over there, you see links to either sign up as a volunteer, join our waitlist as a parent, or even our email, where you can email us if you have anything you would like to speak to us about. You can also connect with Naomi and I on LinkedIn if you'd like to talk more to us about our initiative. Thank you so much for listening. And we have, I think, 2 minutes left, so we'll take any questions.
Yes, well, thank you so much. That's fantastic. The work you're doing is just great, really innovative. And so one question I would have is like how you're organized. Are you like a group at the university, or are you broader than U of C, or like how does it work?
Yes, we're actually broader than UFC, so it just happens to be that a lot of our volunteers come from University of Calgary, but we are a federally registered nonprofit, and we actually run classes for students both in Calgary, Winnipeg, and even some from the US.
Wow, fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, we have some like online classes, and we also have in-person classes right here in Calgary, and we're about to have like a hackathon, I believe, in Winnipeg as well, and that one also in person. But we provide online classes so that like everyone in Canada or even in the US and everyone from everywhere can join us and learn coding for free.
Super. So I would imagine one thing that you'd like is maybe to help like raising awareness of your organization through social media and websites and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay. Corinne, did you have a question or a comment?
Just wondering if you still have any openings for students this summer, or are you teaching classes this summer?
Yes, so we're yet to bring our registration forms, but this summer we're going to host a series of coding camps and regular evening classes in the evenings that students can attend. So for now, the registration forms aren't out on the website, but there's a wait list where parents can put in their email and then they'll be sent the registration forms once it comes out.
Okay. Yeah.
And when will the class be held? Sorry, I should have noticed.
When?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to most likely start second week of July it's going to run for 6 weeks, both the coding camps, which will run during the weekends. So we're going to have 6 different coding camps happening 6 Saturdays between July and August. And then the evening classes that we'll host will also hold most likely the Tuesdays and the Thursdays of those 6 weeks. So yeah, the date is yet to be finalized, but it's between July and August for 6 weeks.
I'm glad you found enough volunteers to keep this running over the summer. And if you have like a snapshot summary, that I'd be happy to post to my Facebook, my LinkedIn, just to help get the word out. Maybe you can send it to me and I can post it to our meetup channel if anybody else would like to share what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, somebody is asking.
Yep.
Thank you for this presentation. It's a very interesting project. And what should I do to become a volunteer?
Awesome. I would just put the link in the chat right now. So the link I just sent is a link to our website where takes you specifically to where you can apply as a volunteer. It just gives you a brief description of what the volunteers are looking for and then a Google form for you to apply. So feel free to check that out.
All right.
Excellent question.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was really nice to hear about this.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to send me your presentation deck, I can post that on our meetup site as well.
Awesome.
So now I'll turn it over to Byron and Eric. You guys have the floor. Please introduce yourselves and your initiative, and we're looking forward to hearing more about it.
Cool. Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, very cool initiative, Abul and Naomi. Thanks for sharing that. I'm definitely going to check that out because very curious. I'll start sharing.
And just a reminder, if you do have any questions or comments, just put them in the chat and we'll tackle them after the presentation.
Very good. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Byron Chu, and my co-presenter tonight is Eric Lee, and we'll do a little bit of a formal introduction in a couple slides. And if you do want the slides, I think Jeff said he'll share them as well, but they are also available at this URL. So tinyurl.com/data4good -Callysto. So Jeff did cover the land acknowledgement also at the beginning of this presentation. And so I guess I just wanted to talk about my own personal journey of reconciliation as well and acknowledgement. And so definitely want to share my thanks to all the elders and all the Indigenous peoples who have protected and caretake the land we live on today, in the past, and also going forward as well. So really appreciate that. A little bit about our agenda. So gonna just talk generally about Callysto, talk a little bit about the resources, won't get into too much details tonight, and then I'm gonna hand it off to Eric to talk more about an exciting collaboration project that began not too long ago, called the Data Dunkers Project, and is rolling out quite rapidly at the moment. So Callysto is what I'm here to talk about tonight, and Callysto is a free online learning tool that helps grades 5 to 12 students and teachers in Canada learn and apply in-demand data science skills. And really the mission of Callysto is to foster computational thinking and data literacy in Canadian schools. A little bit about the history of Callysto. So the Callysto program was started in 2017 by the nonprofit organizations Cybera and the Pacific Institute for the Mathematical Sciences. And this project was previously funded under the National CanCode program. Just this year, Cybera and the Pacific Institute for the Mathematical Sciences have kind of stepped away from maintaining the Callysto project. And so myself, David Hay, and Ian Allison have launched the Callysto Education Initiative, and we are hoping to continue the mission of Callysto kind of going forward as well. About myself and Eric, well, I guess I'll talk about myself first, and Eric can introduce himself probably in more detail a little bit later. But so during my day job, I am the Director of Data Science and Development at Cybera, which is a local nonprofit. And yeah, I also am one of the, I guess, co-founders of the Callysto Education Initiative as well. My connection to Eric was that Eric was an intern on the Callysto project very recently, and through that internship, Eric got connected with the Data Dunkers project, and he's continuing on that project currently. So, really the Callysto project is powered and has really been pushed forward over the number of years since we started by the team members. And so just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the kind of recent and current team members that we've worked with. So you can see just on our website a few of the folks from PIMS. We also work with a researcher, Dr. Maria Kurumisu. She was at the U of A and now she's at McGill University. We also work with Michael Lamoureux quite closely, and Michael is a professor emeritus from the University of Calgary in the mathematics and statistics department. And then David Hay and Ashruna, who's a communication specialist. We also work with a number of teachers on the Callysto project. So Mary Grant has been a major driver of a lot of the initiatives that we've done over the last couple of years. We also work with Rania and Bobby, both teachers as well in different school districts here in the province, and a number of data science interns such as Jenny, Eric, and Ayush as well. So going back to the presentation itself, What is Callysto? Okay, so I talked a little bit about what we do, we're hoping to do. One thing that Callysto does is really around the idea of, introducing data science in classrooms. And so, maybe why is it important for students to learn more about data science in classrooms? This is probably the only slide in my deck that has a lot of text, but, I guess to boil it down, there is a lot of data around us, data surrounds us. We're creating data pretty much every second now. And so in this data-driven world, the ability to process data and turn it into information in an analytical way is very important in many different fields. So data science itself isn't necessarily part of traditional school curriculum. However, a lot of the skills involved in data science are related to data science, such as data collection, data analysis, data visualization, coding, ethics, source analysis, and computational thinking are taught in schools. So Callysto really provides classroom resources and experiential learning opportunities to incorporate data science across all subject areas in regular curriculum so that students can make informed decisions, answer questions, make connections, and maybe most importantly, make meaning in new ways using data. So, to connect it to regular curriculum, I really believe that data literacy is at the core of data science. And so maybe in this Venn diagram that we see here, there's kind of like three main bubbles. So the processing data side, where you collect, filter, and manage data. There's the quantitative reasoning side, where you analyze and interpret data, recognize bias using math and statistics. And then just as importantly is the communication side of things, so communicating with data, so storytelling, data visualizations. And in the middle is really data literacy, which is that interdisciplinary approach that kind of brings all those pieces together. And when you look at data science, it really is across all subject areas. So from that perspective as well, it is accessible maybe to more individuals who may not, be super inclined to focus on things such as science and math, for example, or statistics, but are interested in literature, arts, and history. So through those subject matters, or with those subject matters, we can also incorporate data and data science skills to make those a little bit different or make them more interesting in different ways. So what do we do and how do we do it? Really, at the core of what we do is using the Python programming language. And so Python is very popular. It's open source. It's still probably the preferred programming language for data scientists. We use a lot of Jupyter ecosystem tools. So again, these are open source tools that are web-based, interactive. Notebooks are the most famous Jupyter tool. It's a document where data scientists do a lot of their work. We also use other Jupyter-based tools such as Jupyter Hub, Jupyter Book, or the executable book project, Jupyter Lite. And we'll get maybe into a couple of examples with Jupyter Lite a little bit later on in the presentation. We also use GitHub. So it's a Git-based online software development platform, and we have our own GitHub organization and a bunch of repositories as well. So if we're going back to that Venn diagram where there's one sort of bubble around processing data, one thing we highly encourage for classroom use is to actually leverage open data. And so there is a lot of open data at your fingertips and available. So there's municipal open data, such as the Alberta Open Data Portal. There's other municipal data, such as the City of Calgary Open Data Portal. There's UN data, there's WHO data. There's a lot of different data out there, StatsCan, World Bank, NASA. And so we really highly encourage teachers and students to kind of leverage that for their classrooms, especially teachers to bring open data into their classrooms. One example of that is using City of Calgary open data. And this particular notebook was created by a CB computing science teacher named Gustav Wenz, and he used the City of Calgary open data portal. And specifically, they use something called Socrata, the Socrata platform, and they have an API. And so he demonstrates using the SODA API, or the Socrata Open Data API, how to access Calgary or City of Calgary open data using SQL-like queries in Python. So that's an interesting example of using City of Calgary open data, and pretty easy to access like within our platform. And I'll just show you how to actually do that now as well. So if you go to our website, callysto.ca, and you go to resources, just move this little bar. Actually, under resources, there's something called learning modules. It'll take you to this big, huge, filterable kind of spreadsheet, and you could type something like API, or you can toggle and filter some of this big list of resources using these pre-built filters. So you go to technology studies, and you kind of scroll over one to this, using the SOTA API to access, transform, and plot data, and you click on that. We use something in the background. The URL that you click on behind this link is using, again, another Jupyter kind of ecosystem technology called NB Git puller. And so what that does is literally do a Git clone and pull from your GitHub repo into wherever your destination is. And in this case, the destination is something known as our Callysto Hub. Typically, you do have to log into the Callysto Hub. I didn't show the login. I've already logged in beforehand, but so this is something we host ourselves on local servers that Cybera still maintains and operates at the moment. So this is my own kind of containerized environment within the Callysto Hub, which again is a Jupyter Hub environment. And this is the notebook itself, kind of showing that how to connect to the Socrata Open Data API using a notebook. And so I can run this notebook using a typical kind of Jupyter notebook process of clicking the run button on code cells. And so I'm clicking on code cells. I can then do a few more of these, and then I can start to do a retrieval or a simple query. So in the simple query, I'm going to run this SQL-like statement and collect some data. And so this notebook goes through, there's 4 notebooks in this series that goes through how to access and use the Socrata API. And so it kind of dives in and is useful for classroom purposes for both teachers and students, because if they want to access this, or individual students want to access this, they'll have access to an individual notebook that is in their own containerized environment, which allows students to kind of mess around and break things and experiment with things without impacting another student's experience as well. So that's one example. Going back to my slides, the other kind of two Venn diagrams I kind of talked about around data literacy were quantitative reasoning and communication. So really a big key part of those things is something called critical data analysis, a key skill or competency to develop. And so that involves evaluating data sources for reliability and bias, assessing data completeness and accuracy as well. And through that, you can also apply quantitative analytics. And so you can identify trends and patterns, recognize potential biases or errors. And one thing we highly encourage through all of our resources that we've developed on the Callysto project is really to incorporate data visualization, because it can help boost engagement. They're interdisciplinary in nature a lot of times, and will provide real life examples. And this is a fun little graphic we like to show, talking about how data visualizations can also mislead. So again, going into the idea of critical data analysis and identifying potential biases or errors within a data set. Okay, I'm going to show you now a couple more Callysto resources before I hand it off to Eric. So we have a section on our website called Data Visualizations, and these are kind of short exercises that we create on various different topics that are kind of mind, or maybe kind of showing up in media. And so they're on our radar, and so we want to create something really quick. And so these are the data visualization exercises. We also have, in terms of content for teachers and students on our website, online courses. So a couple of the more recent online courses we've developed are called AI and Data Science, and this is like a CTF course for grades 5 to 9 students and any teachers as well. We've also developed a computing science 10 credit course for grades 10 to 12 teachers and students as well. So those are kind of some of the more recent resources we've developed, and these are all Jupyter Notebook based as well. Other resources we have on our website include some Indigenous content, and these are developed in collaboration with the Coast Salish Tla'amin Nation First Nations off the west coast of BC. And so one example I wanted to introduce today was something called the Coast Salish basket weaving resource that we've developed in collaboration. And so that collaboration led to the development of a lesson plan and the accompanying resource, or the notebook. And so this lesson plan is for teachers to use in their classroom, and it goes through, an introduction, talks about learning outcomes, curriculum connections, talks about required materials, and it's pretty much ready to use in the classroom if you wanted to. And so there's a link to a notebook here. I've already opened the notebook, and so the notebook looks something like this. One of the things we purposely do at Callysto is actually show all the Python programming code that we use, or in this case, some HTML to modify some things. So we try to show all the code. We're not trying to hide anything from the students. We want to expose them as much as possible to the code behind the scenes to help create the resource. And so this resource goes through the history and the tradition, the cultural traditions of these Coast Salish basket weaving practices. And part of that is kind of uncovering the mathematics, or the Indigenous mathematics behind these basket weaving traditions. And so even from a quick glance at a photograph like this, you can start to see some geometric patterns kind of arising or appearing in the patterns that are developed. And so we talk about the connection between mathematics and these geometric motifs or patterns. And then we talk about things such as geometric operations. So how do you develop and create these patterns? And so oftentimes you can start with a small single unit or motif, and then apply different geometric operations to it to create a more complex or more complex motif. And so we talk about reflections and flipping, horizontally and vertically stacking. And eventually in this resource, if you scroll down, you can create a larger kind of interactive motif. And eventually you can actually 3D model that motif and create something interactive that the students can play with. And so when you create your own kind of unique motif, you can map that onto this 3D object, and then you can actually save the image. So that's one kind of like interesting and fun resource that we have for teachers and students in the classroom. Another one that we like to talk about is or showcase is something we call the geography and history of residential schools. And so this is a data visualization exercise. And so in this format, it's a blog post. But at the end of the blog post, we show a link, or we have a link that links directly to the notebook itself. So students and teachers can play around with that to actually see, all the behind the scenes coding and data cleaning and quantitative reasoning that goes into like developing the notebook. But the things we like to showcase on the data visualization side are things like this, for example. So this is an animated GIF of the history of residential schools in Canada in terms of a timeline. So when the residential schools opened and closed, and it kind of slowly scrolls through this between 1841 and I think 1998 or 1997. I can't remember exactly. But you can start to see, like, as we approach 1990 or 1970, 1980, the number of residential schools starts to close. So, things are changing over time, and there's like a reason behind a lot of these schools closing. And so that is kind of interesting on its own. But everything is kind of like in this timeline view, just a single color. And so that single color is blue, and it doesn't maybe it tells an interesting story in terms of opening and closing, but you can actually add another layer to that in terms of adding another layer of information using color. And so what we do here is actually add affiliation. So who was actually running and operating these residential schools as well. And so that tells a little bit of a different story using this timeline animated view. And, you know, one thing we often hear about in media or the news is sort of like the role of the federal government in terms of these residential schools, as well as sort of like the different churches that are involved in the church affiliations involved in running and operating these residential schools. And so you may not even realize that there are so many different church affiliations involved with running the residential schools. You may only hear about one in the media, and this kind of like maybe challenges some of the preconceived ideas you have in your head based on what you've heard from a single source or a single topic or something. One thing I found interesting, and one thing we've talked about quite a bit, is really just the role of the federal government as well. So that not only were they involved in sort of like, you know, putting into action these residential schools, they also ran some residential schools as well. So that was kind of eye-opening for myself, and I didn't realize that. So that's another interesting resource that we have that's also available for teachers and students. I think the one other resource I wanted to introduce tonight was something called the Hansard analysis. And the Hansard analysis, well, the Hansard itself is a record of all the debate that happens in Parliament, not only in Canada, but in other, I think other G7 nations as well. So, but we have our own Hansard here in Canada. And so one thing we've done, and Eric contributed to this project as well, is actually say, okay, let's access the Hansard and actually analyze it, because a lot of words are spoken during the Hansard debates themselves. And so we have another learning module associated with that. If you're curious to find it, if you go to our website again and look for resources, learning modules, and you type in Hansard, we actually have two different notebooks or learning resources that we've created on this. And so this notebook itself is on just the Hansard analysis. This particular one uses kind of like a data set we curated from 2020 and that we've cleaned up. And it shows off a number of different things in terms of like, you can do analysis on things such as like who was speaking. You can also do an analysis in terms of like the number of speeches. And you can also look at, you know, how long those speeches were by an individual. And so you can actually dive into like the whole parliamentary debate from a completely different perspective in terms of like, maybe not just about what was spoken, but also like the details of like how much was spoken and who's speaking. So for example, in this one about top 20 Hansard speakers by speech length, this is from 2020, of course. Justin Trudeau, who's our prime minister, you know, was at the number 20 in terms of like length of speech, which is kind of interesting. You can also break it down by party affiliation. So that's kind of neat. You can think about it in terms of like a little bit of a math idea of thinking proportionally. So dividing it by the number of seats that each party has. And when you actually normalize it by the number of seats, you know, the Hansard speaker frequency by party is actually, it shows a slightly different representation of the data. So even though the Green Party doesn't have a lot of seats, they spoke quite a bit based on the number of seats they have. And then also similarly about the number of words spoken by a party, what stands out is the Green Party speaks a lot of words, even though they have a very low number of seats. So they do make the most of their time. And then you can also do more of a natural language processing look at things. So you can actually go look at the word context and word content itself to look for topics. And so you can look at the main topics that were spoken. You can dive deeper into those. You can also do it by the party itself and see which parties talk about what. So that's kind of interesting. So you can look at Liberal, New Democratic, the Green Party, Conservative Party, Bloc Québécois, Independent, and you can see what the individual parties are talking about more than the others. You can do noun analysis, again, using some NLP and pronoun analysis. One fun thing that I think Eric and a couple of other colleagues, including Mary Grant, came up with, and as well, one of the people I work with currently, Jordan Swanson, came up with, is the idea of kind of like obfuscating who is speaking. So in this case, you may think you know what your party, or maybe the party that you're most interested in, speaks about in Parliament, but you can blind that information. So we kind of like create these fake parties like Party E, Party B, Party C, Party D, Party A, and then as a little bit of an exercise in the classroom, you can say like, who do you think talked most about climate, country, care, health, community action, and see if your thoughts or your biases or your opinions kind of line up with actually what the data is showing you. So then you can kind of unmap that and actually showcase the real answers as well. So that's kind of fun. So this data set in particular was from 2020, and it's curated by us. What also I think Eric helped with was the idea of actually getting more recent data. And so there's something called the Open Parliament API, and you can use that to curate or to query more recent data that's currently being talked about in Parliament. So when you use that API, you can get current things such as Budget Implementation Act 2024, number 1, and you can see what the more common things that are being talked about in Parliament. So mental health and addictions, business and supply, housing, carbon pricing, finance, and then you can see uncommon topics such as oil and gas industry, CBC, pharmacare, fisheries and oceans. So some interesting things. There's also a number 5 in here as well. So I'd be curious to know what that means as well. So yeah, just a few examples of what we do with Callysto learning resources. Another thing quickly that we talk about oftentimes with teachers and students is really around the idea of AI literacy in the classroom. So, we ask them questions, and it's more conversational in nature in terms of understanding how comfortable they are using, AI-based technologies in the classroom, kind of what direction that is going in, and where are some of the pain points or parts that they're a little bit uncertain about in terms of, using AI in the classroom, basically. So there's a lot of discussion and interest around that topic at the moment. So it's some really great conversation with teachers and educators in this area. Another thing that we do at Callysto is provide experiential learning opportunities in the classroom, at schools, through something that we like to call data labyrinths and hackathons. Maybe I won't show this off because I have been talking quite a bit, so maybe I'll let Eric do a little bit of talking around this as well. But during these experiential learning opportunities, there's sometimes, or most of the time, they're all-day events where students, break into small groups of 3 or 4, and they work on data problems and hack by creating or hacking solutions to those data problems, usually involving an open data set. And I would note that when we start these activities, a lot of the times at the beginning of the day, none of these students have any experience programming in Python, but by the end of it, they will all have been exposed and have written some Python code and actually written their first Python programs to do something. So it's kind of like a fun event for both the educators, the teachers, and the students at those events. And those are events oftentimes that we lead for the teachers themselves. So at this point, I think I'll hand it off to Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Byron. So yeah, I guess to quickly elaborate on my current position. So previously, as Byron mentioned, I was a data science intern with Callysto, and I actually worked on the Data Dunkers program. I think it was about 4 or 5 months into the internship. I'm not too sure exactly when it was, but I was introduced to the program and the project. And after my internship ended, they offered me to kind of continue on that project. And yeah, and I'm just here to kind of talk about it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and quick summary about what Data Dunkers is. So Data Dunkers is a basketball and data science learning program, which mainly aims to teach students in grades 5 to 12 fundamental data science skills through basketball statistics in a fun and inclusive environment. And the program is mainly funded by PS43, Dell, Callysto, and Digital Moment. Yeah, and kind of highlighting one of the key partnerships, Dell and PS43. So for at Data Dunkers, one of the key things that we want to maintain and prioritize is teaching data science in a way which is fun and interactive. So we're able to, by partnering with PS43, we're able to leverage basketball and technology as primary learning skills, and then also create opportunities for students in K-12 and guide them to be successful and reach their full potential, regardless of their background or personal circumstances. Yeah, and quickly introduce a little snippet of what we do at example of like a project or example of what we do. Kind of a Raptors update here. Not Raptors, sorry, Pacers update. But in the second quarter here, we see that the Pacers scored 32 points, and New York Knicks scored 21 points. So on the surface level, we don't really know exactly why the Pacers scored that many points, but we can kind of delve deeper into the main reasons why they scored. And next slide. Yeah, and here we have kind of a chart, the field goal percentage, and field goal percentage essentially means how many players made shots or missed shots. So on the left here, we have the Pacers, who have 72%, so they made 13 out of 18 shots. And then on the right, the Knicks had 33%, so 7 out of 21. And here on the left, we're able to kind of see the majority of the shots that the Pacers made. So there's a lot of shots in what we call the restricted area, which is kind of like that square. A lot of shots in the paint, and then a couple of shots in the 3-point line. You can see that kind of ring around the net. And then in the Knicks, we kind of see an opposite. They missed a lot of shots in the restricted area, missed a couple of 3-point shots as well. And this is kind of the interesting part about basketball. We're able to kind of create a story based on the points and the different types of shots that are being taken. Yeah, and quickly go over Pascal Siakam's stats. So on the right here, we see his points, 21.7, that's 29th in the league, rebounds 7.1, 34th in the league. And these are just kind of different metrics that we can use to kind of create different visualizations or try to create different projects based off these different statistics. And yeah, there's just a bunch of different ways that you can kind of use data and then leverage it to create different visualizations or projects. And one of Pascal's main goals is to be top 5 in the NBA. So here in the 2023-2024 postseason stats, we see that he's leading his team in both points and rebounds. Assists and steals is leading by his teammates. And then, yeah, this is kind of showing how even though previously he was on the Toronto Raptors, but now he's on the Pacers, he's still on kind of pace on that goal that he wants to continuously get better in the NBA. And currently he is also deep in the playoff run. Similarly here, we kind of see how even things like Pascal's shoes can influence like the amount of points he scores sometimes. So we have the Nike KD14, Nike Zoom KD12, and then he also wore the Nike KD10 once, and then majority he's wearing the Nike KD13, and you can kind of see the different variations in points scored there. And yeah, this is a quick snippet of kind of the data science and resource development done at Data Dunkers. Looking here at this code snippet, it is done in Jupyter Lite or Jupyter Notebook, as Byron introduced before. So here we just the page equals pd.read HTML line is basically just retrieving the standings for the 2023 season, and then based on that HTML that's being downloaded, we can run a quick loop and then kind of go over the teams and their standings and different metrics like the amount of points they're allowing to be scored and the amount of points that they're actually scoring, and then their overall just wins and losses. And similarly here, below is a quick visualization on Pascal's points per season. So he started in the league in 2016-17 season, and then every year he's been gradually going up in points, and then at the end of the graph right here, we see it in 2022-2023 is one of his peaks. And then 2023-2024, we can kind of see that he's also matching the output in 22 points per game. Similarly here, this is a quick project that a student can make and then compare. So here in the right, the player ID is a 169. So that's a Pascal's player ID. And then a student here could just kind of create like a kind of a quick comparison on their stats to Pascal Siakam. So the top visualization is comparing assists. So similarly here, Pascal's assists are going up each season, and then you can kind of put your own stats for like maybe in like a basketball game or your basketball kind of junior high or high school team. Kind of compare your stats here, and then similarly below that is Pascal's blocks per game. And then you can kind of get into a little bit more of an advanced visualization here. So we have the shot chart by type for the Toronto Raptors, which is Pascal Siakam's previous team. So we can see kind of a ring form, a lot of these pink dots in the visualization, and then that kind of shows the evolution of the modern NBA. So at the moment, a lot of people are shooting 3-pointers. Ever since a couple seasons ago, the 3-point shot has become much more popular. And then we can all see a couple of different shots, mostly in the restricted area, like I mentioned, like kind of in that 0 to -100 or 100 range, and then not that many mid-range shots, so the purple and the orange kind of shots. And yeah, that kind of goes more into like that storytelling aspect of data science and what you can kind of create your own conclusions based on that. And these are a couple of quick pictures of Data Dunkers in action. So this was Data Dunkers' first kind of in-person hackathon that was being run. I think this was sometime in November. So students came in, we came in to the students' schools, and students were able to run a quick kind of data collection project. So basically they shot their basketball on like a mini hoop that we brought in, and then based on that mini hoop, based on whether they made it or not, we can kind of put in that data into like a sheet, and then using that data, you can kind of create small projects like comparing your stats, like as I previously showed, comparing your stats to Pascal Siakam, or even creating different like visualizations of like comparing your stats to your teammates. And this is another hackathon run at McGill. And on the right here, we kind of have another code snippet of kind of a query of HTML cells. So essentially, what's going on here is that we're just taking Pascal's like the different HTML lines of draft class per game stats, TS, BI, and then we can also, and based on those kind of HTML queries, we can kind of create a data frame. And here, as you can see below, you can see this different seasons, age of the Toronto Raptors players, and then below we can also see Pascal Siakam's. It says confidence here, but it's basically just like his progression in like minutes played and field goal percentage and his points. Yeah, and this is a quick timeline of the Data Dunkers program. So in the April to June kind of 2024 red box, currently we're trying to expand the program to support more students. And then hopefully in July 2024, we're going to try to create a big celebration in Toronto and bring in a couple of students that participated in Data Dunkers and try to create a big celebration and hopefully bring Pascal into Toronto and kind of surprise the students as well. And similarly here, we have Data Dunkers, our scale plan for 2024. We're hoping to expand to, right now, Data Dunkers is mainly focused in Toronto, but we're trying to expand to Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, Toronto, more in Toronto, Montreal, and Indigenous community, and try to create an after-school program as well. And yeah, that wraps up most of the things on my side. Thank you everybody for taking the time for our presentation. Do we want to open the floor to any questions?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Byron and Eric. That fabulous program. So it's been going on for how many years, Byron?
So the Callisto program itself started in kind of late 2017, but we really got it like rolling in around 2018 timeframe. But the Data Dunkers program, as Eric mentioned, is new. Like
Yeah.
that is like within the last, I guess, 6 months-ish.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think so, like 6 months time frame.
Yeah, so that collaboration really kicked off around we had Cybera has an annual conference called the Cyber Summit in the November time range, and we connected with or David Hay, one of our coworkers, like he presented about data dunkers and with Katina from Dell at that, and really kind of introduced it more widely to some Alberta folks.
Yeah, I can see how that would really be of interest to students when you start to introduce basketball and players and that sort of thing. So the resources that you showed us are available on the Callisto website. Now, are they like freely available open source resources?
Yeah, that's right. So everything that's been developed so far on the website is open source and yeah, publicly licensed open source, and they're free to use.
Okay, so it's like it's not just for students and teachers. Any member of the public can access the resources.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like it's right now we have everything kind of linking, or in a lot of cases linking to our Callisto Hub environment. And one of the things we didn't get into too much today was there's kind of like a new kind of Jupyter tool out there called Jupyter Lite, which allows you to run a lot of notebooks like in your browser. And so that technology is kind of nice because you don't need an email address per se to kind of log into some type of service or platform. You can just use your browser and do things in your own browser. And so we think that's going to help increase kind of access kind of going forward to a lot of these resources. But yeah, everything that we showed today is available off the website.
All right, and then sort of I guess there's sort of legacy, the previous funding over the years that have built what's there, so that kind of perpetuated. But
Yep.
I mean, currently into the future from a funding and sustainability point of view.
Yeah, that's what we're working on. Like we're pretty new. So the Callisto Education Initiative is literally like brand new kind of thing. And so we're kind of working on our plans for that, and we'll kind of see what it brings forward. We're not sure at the moment, but definitely looking to continue sort of what we've been doing. And we prefer open source and freely available to all the teachers and students and educators and anyone who's interested in the resources. So we want to continue that kind of going forward.
Mhm. Great, and I would encourage if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the chat or just raise your hand and you can sort of ask it in your own voice if you wish. There is a comment and question here. How are the exercises on the website tailored to meet the needs and skill levels of different students?
Yeah, excellent question. So one of the things we've kind of proposed is, we create maybe a template. So the resource that you see is modifiable. And so we encourage teachers and educators and students to really go in and I guess more specifically the educators to modify that as needed for their kind of local learning environments. Sometimes there is a lot of like code and Python programming that goes into there. So when we had, stable funding, we could kind of help a teacher modify that, or modify what we had created as a template, or take their idea that they come to us with and kind of turn that into a resource they could use for the classroom kind of thing. But yeah, like that was kind of a nice thing, and that's what Eric helped with quite a bit with his time sort of on the Callisto project.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of capacity building within the educational system is so important. Like, do you see any like progress or movement to the recognition of data literacy, data skills, digital literacy as how important it is in society today? And is that getting embedded in some of the core curriculum?
Yeah, we see different elements. So like in Alberta, computational thinking is one element, and that is, definitely included as part of curriculum kind of going forward. And in different provinces, it's different things. So like in Ontario and BC, there's a lot more sort of reference to kind of like this data, maybe the core data science components that we're maybe a little bit more familiar with. And so they're actually incorporated even and coding, especially like even at a younger kind of grade level. So you start to see that depending on the province. And, I think curriculum changes. And so as those curriculums change, they kind of like update to include different elements of data science even more.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I guess there is some awareness raising, that those of us in the data community can help do, right, about the importance here and around public policy and educational policy. So some other questions that have come in, like in terms of what you have on your website and the resources and the various things that you have there. I mean, are there sort of minimum platform requirements in terms of, CPU or other things like, can this be run on like a Chromebook or something, a very, very simple, very light platform?
Yeah, 100%. So the Callisto Hub itself is a cloud platform. So if you're using a resource that connects to our cloud platform and you log into the cloud platform, like none of the computing is done sort of like on your end. It's done on our cloud platform, and then you kind of see the output on your web page. And so that works on everything. So we run any of the events, the kind of those experiential learning events that I talked about. They are done at the schools with Chromebooks typically, and so those are the most common, I guess, pieces of technology that we work with in the classrooms, and they seem to work pretty well. And more recently with Jupyter Lite as well, like the in-browser activities, they also work quite well in the Chromebooks as well. So yeah, you can actually use what you have, and you don't need to get specialized equipment for that. So we think, in terms of access, like that makes it kind of nice.
Yeah, so it's quite inclusive in terms of a range of users. That's great. Bit of a technical question. Do you have plans to support R with RM Markdown or Quattro?
Sorry, I'm just reading the question. Oh, yes. So R Markdown or Quarto, or Quattro. I think right now the Callisto Hub does support R. I don't think I haven't tried with R Markdown, so you can definitely run R natively in well, we have a kernel for it in our Callisto Hub platform, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I don't think we support like R Markdown kind of things, and that's definitely like something with like Jupyter Books, for example. They have like this sort of like mist Markdown thing that they're putting a lot of effort into, and that's kind of like an R Markdown maybe equivalent, maybe in a lot of ways. And so a lot of the nice things you can do with R Markdown, you can do with like Jupyter Books, for example, in the mist framework. And so yeah, there's a lot of things that are kind of changing and gaining popularity as well. So yeah, I think you can use R in the current Jupyter Hub platform. I don't know about Jupyter Lite, but I imagine there will be something in the future that kind of supports that.
Yeah, I don't just to add on that, I don't think R is supported in Jupyter Lite at the moment, but I think in the future there's been rapid development, so I wouldn't be surprised in the near future they added something like that.
So there's a kind of a shout out here too. So it says Callisto has been instrumental in integrating data science into social studies at Bishop Carroll High School. Will this opportunity exist in the upcoming school year?
Yeah, to be determined, to be honest, at this point, we're not sure what we don't have like funding to do that at the moment, but you never know. And so we're looking for opportunities to kind of to see what we can do.
Okay.
But yes, thanks, Shane, for joining us today.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Shane.
Shane, did you have a question or comment you wanted to ask yourself?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to thank, well, Callysto. I had an opportunity to work with young Eric, and of course, there's Mary and Jordan and Brian. And Callysto was instrumental in bringing a skill that is much needed. I'm not sure, like at the high school level, what we have to face with if our program of studies in terms of programming or career and technologies and studies is 2009.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when we try to integrate it, we have to use it, into the core subjects. But I noticed that, I was working with another group that was kind of down in the US. I know that they have a big push for data science, especially down in the United States. And I know there's like a group like Callysto, and what they offer is so valuable. And I want to thank you for all the resources that you guys put forth. And this is the type of skills and type of sort of lesson plans, that truly enrich, for the students, within our high school. And I know I use the Hansard analysis that the Callysto just went through. I use that for current events because it's relevant and it's authentic. And we actually get to pull just the recent debates. So it's amazing the resources that Callysto has prepared. So I'm just hoping that you guys continue, especially in the education sector. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Shane. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess one thing is to maybe we'll be telling these success stories and sort of testimonials. Find a way to get that out to the public and to the educational decision makers, right? To see the value of this type of program. And you think of the millions and millions of dollars that are going into the educational program and the curriculums and rewrites of curriculums and all that kind of controversy, and what relatively small dollars in a program like this, what kind of difference it can make. So yeah, I really agree that it's so important, and looking to the future, around data literacy, digital literacy. I've been working on, with the city of Calgary on their digital equity strategy, right? Which speaks to a variety of populations who are disadvantaged and underrepresented in many ways in some of these areas. And, having that sort of tiering of foundational skills and intermediate skills and more advanced skills is so important to the development of sort of digital citizens. And everybody today needs to be a digital citizen, right? And so this type of work in the educational system will really help to prepare folks for sure. So any other questions or comments at this point? If not, that's great. Thanks so much. It's been really interesting and eye-opening conversation around Callysto, and yeah, we hope to hear more and keep in touch. Some of the resources, I think, even from the Data for Good community, some of those open data resources would be very valuable for our micro projects and that sort of thing as well. So I think we'll take a hard look at how we can introduce some of that. So that's it for this evening. We'll take a break over the summer. So we'll be back in September, the 4th week of September. I think it's the 26th. So look us up then. Thanks, and have a great summer, everyone. And we can stop the recording.
Thanks everyone for the opportunity.
That was really interesting. Thank you for presenting.
No
I
problem.
hope you find the